Welcome to Season 2 of the Simply Dynamic podcast. I'm Jennifer Maiden, co-creator and executive producer of this podcast, and the Assistant Dean of Graduate Studies at Rowan University's Rohr College of Business. Today, I invite you to join our hosts, Joe Devine and Christina Renna, for discussion with Toni Pergolin, President and CEO at Bancroft, one of the largest human services providers in New Jersey and the greater Philadelphia region. Toni has grown and diversified the services and programs provided for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, autism, and those in need of neurological rehabilitation, positioning Bancroft for a strong and sustainable future.
Christina, today is a wonderful day. You know why?
And tell me everything, Joe.
Because we are at the Simply Dynamic podcast, and we have a tremendously simply dynamic guest today.
Never a bad day then.
And it's also good for me because I'm in the room with two very successful CEOs, my co-host and our guest today, Toni Pergolin, the CEO and President of Bancroft. Toni, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Christina. I'm so excited to be here.
Welcome. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, it's been a joy to have people like you and others on this podcast. But we know you for many years, and we're honored to know you. And just a little bit, you've had an interesting life and career. I kind of know a little bit about it, as does Christina. But I thought it'd be good for our guest to understand a little bit about your career journey and how you got to where you got to as a CEO, and what made you think you could be a CEO?
I didn't start out thinking I could be, Joe. I think most CEOs would say that, honestly.
Right. I agree.
I had really terrific opportunity and career at the University of Pennsylvania Health System for 15 years. Learned a lot about healthcare, learned a lot about patient care, learned a lot about operations and finance, which is really my background. And after 15 years, I was looking for the next opportunity and was really thrilled to be offered the position to be the Chief Financial Officer at Bancroft. So I knew nothing about Bancroft at the time. I didn't even know it existed. But I was really excited to be a Chief Financial Officer. And I did know that there were some financial challenges that the organization was going through. But, I had been through turnarounds at Penn before. I felt, I'll see what I can do. So my husband is in banking, and he looked at the financials and said, I think it's going to go bankrupt. And I said, won't that be so cool? I'm a CFO, and I can learn how to be bankrupt. That was my going in.
And the second was, of course, you had to come work in New Jersey.
That too. I had a very long commute. I lived in King of Prussia at the time.
Oh.
So I came really with eyes wide open, really did see very quickly that they were struggling financially, and, went to work. And 20 years later, I am very happy to say that I was able to stabilize the organization and then grow it significantly. But the best part is that we were able to provide access to so many children and adults who need our care. I built a brand new school, which is so exciting. And I wrote a book to really share some of my leadership lessons. So it never would have I charted that path, but it's been really exciting. And I feel like I'm honored to have the opportunity. And I would tell you, if I think back, what am I most proud of? Is that I was able to use my leadership and skill sets to do something really meaningful and help people's lives get better.
That's great.
I feel it every single day at Bancroft.
And you really did that. And all the things you just mentioned, school, the book, we're going to get into all of that. I just want to say that, Toni's heard me say this before, Joe's probably heard me say it before, but I look at Toni as someone who knew me long before I was CEO of the South Jersey Chamber of Commerce, was our treasurer at the Chamber of Commerce when I was just coming up through the ranks, and had the faith in me to assume this role, and someone I looked up to tremendously as I was kind of growing in my career to where I am. And so I love you, Toni. You do great work, and I just look up to you so much. You got into it a little bit, but let's talk about, for those of you, you said you didn't know the Bancroft organization before you went there. So just for those people not familiar, do you mind talking about the organization? And it's a nonprofit organization as well. So that's important.
So Bancroft is a nonprofit organization. It's 140 years old. I started by a school teacher in 1883 who saw that there was one student who was learning at a different pace and thought if she could really spend some extra time and change the way she was teaching her, she too could learn and grow like everybody else. And that has remained really the mission of the organization for 140 years. So today we serve 2,000 children and adults with autism, intellectual and developmental disability, and brain injuries. We serve them residentially. We have over 200 group homes and apartments. We have 4 schools. We have 18 facilities that include day programs and corporate facilities. We have over 3,000 amazing, dedicated employees. 3,000.
Unbelievable.
Wow. It's a great organization with a great mission.
And recently, the school was built. I say recently. I mean, I guess time just feels so relative these days. But the Bancroft School opened in Mount Laurel, which is your most recent school. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because I had the honor of seeing it down when it was a plot of land and a big mound of dirt to what it is today, which is just simply incredible.
So thank you for that. It's 6 years old, which it is hard to believe it's that long already. You know, I would tell you that the Welsh campus, it's called the Raymond and Joanne Welsh campus, really was a game changer for Bancroft and for the autism community. For Bancroft, you know, as I said, we serve children and adults. Adults by far is our largest program, and 75% of those adults started in our school. So the school is the front door to the entire organization. So we had to do something. It was in Haddonfield. We loved Haddonfield, but the school was too small. We were completely outgrown. It wasn't, modern, all those types of things that, families were looking for when they were looking for a school. So we knew we had to, find a new location. And the Mount Laurel location is 80 acres. The school is 175,000 square feet. And it's amazing. And, it has dramatically changed, in my opinion, the autism community in that it was built specifically for children with autism. So everything in it, the colors were purposeful. There's nowhere where you can stand in that whole campus and not see nature purposefully because it calms them. So the space is bigger. The activities there are just for them. There's a pool just for them. There's a jungle gym just for them. There's a Wawa and ShopRite so that they can learn how to work in a Wawa and ShopRite. There's a gym that's for them. So everything was built for them. And additionally, we have 70 housing units on that campus. So with the increase in capacity, we were really able to market it countrywide. And today we feel fortunate that we can offer this wonderful service across the nation. We have children in there today from the state of Washington, Colorado, Oregon, and they literally fly them across the country to get the care that we provide. So it's been a wonderful.
So that's remarkable. So one of the things, of course, people get confused about is the world of profit, nonprofit, and not-for-profit. So Bancroft sits in that unique area. Talk to people a little bit about why the challenges being a CEO of a nonprofit organization is not dissimilar, very similar in some ways to those who are in those other businesses as well, and what you do that's important to make sure how the organization remains viable.
So, and I appreciate the question, Joe. I absolutely, when I define a nonprofit, I say it's a business just like a for-profit. We generate revenue. We have expenses, we have to pay bills, and we need to generate a profit. The only difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit is what we do with the profit. So in a for-profit, they pay their shareholders, they pay the owner, they pay individuals who invested in them. In the nonprofit, we invest it back in the company. So in my opinion, in many ways, we have to have a profit even more than for-profits do because otherwise we can't invest back in the organization. And at Bancroft, investing back in the organization means things like giving wages to our staff when we don't get a rate increase from the state. It means, buying more group homes so we can continue to serve more people. It means fixing the 200 group homes we have with roofs and new bathrooms and new driveways, new technology. All those things cost money. And so for me, it's critically important that an organization understands that from a nonprofit perspective. That, it's funny, when I first started there, I started talking about the turnaround and we got to make a profit. And people would pull me aside and say, I know you're new. Do you know that we're a nonprofit? Because I don't think we're allowed to make money. I mean, that was really their mindset.
Wow.
And when that's your mindset, you almost close, which is unfortunately where Bancroft almost. So even just helping people understand that, educate them, teaching them about, running Bancroft is just like running your own personal, checking account. And that was probably the biggest. And, my mantra and the message I've been sending since I walked in those doors 20 years ago is no margin, no mission. If you don't have a margin, you can't have a mission. You really need to have both.
Well, it's really, and this podcast is all about leadership, different leadership styles, different organizations, and how leaders adapt. And hearing that story of you coming in on the brink of bankruptcy and hearing where the organization is today due in totality to your leadership and, of course, the team you surround yourself with, which no good leader could be a good leader without a great team surrounding them. It's really remarkable. And the fact that Bancroft's a nonprofit organization and your kind of journey and your path, I think you collectively brought that into the book that came out right before COVID. Am I making that? Right around the 2020 timeframe. I remember it was one of the last things I did, Toni, was go to the year book unveiling, and then the world closed down. So do you want to talk a little bit about the book? Because it's fabulous.
Thank you. I would love to. So first of all, when I talk about the book, I would say it was really one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm a numbers person, so words don't come easy to me. It was a really, really long process. It was one thing to write what you did, but to make it into a story and to share the lessons. And I really, I had two main purposes. I wanted people to be much more aware of Bancroft and what it did, because I was amazed that I had been there for so long and I never heard of it. So I felt that was important. So I have a lot of family stories in there so people really get an understanding of what Bancroft is. And then the other piece was I really wanted to educate people about nonprofits and just how important. And so Bancroft is important, but every nonprofit is, and just how they support your community and how you, as living in a community should and could really kind of help them. So, I say it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I'd say it's also one of the best things I've ever done. I mean, it has raised awareness, I would be honest, about Bancroft and about me as a leader in ways I could have never anticipated. So if you're thinking about it, do it. It's worth it.
So, you lead me into a perfect question. One of the things I always struggle with over the years is that not all businesses, leaders, and realize that they have a social responsibility to everyone in the community. What would you recommend to business leaders out there to consider working with students from your school and adults from your schools that will help them be an important part of society? And in some ways, I've seen it myself, how it changes the culture of the organization. Yes. Because people with those special needs also change to other people to understand that they bring more value to the table than people think. What would you recommend to be business leaders?
So, April is Autism Acceptance Month.
Right.
So, and, my advice is be intentionally accepting. So that's how we're going to really move the needle for the people that Bancroft serves and many others like them. It's one world for everyone, and we believe that. So I ask business leaders to think about how they can be intentional accepting. So things like hire them. I mean, they are fabulous employees. They are on time. They never complain. They're so happy to be there. And you're right, Joe. Their coworkers always say that they learn more from the individuals with a disability than they think they teach them. The other thing I recommend that employers do, business leaders do, is think about your customers, right? Is your staff trained to really accept people with disabilities, right? If they come in your store, or if they come in your shop, if they come, if they work, are you ready for your customers? And also your environment. Right? You need to really think about your environment so that, is it, really ethically for people with neurodiversities? Sure. And of course, I couldn't leave this part of the conversation without saying that Bancroft can be a resource for all of these. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. We love being out in the community. We really believe it's part of our role and responsibility is to work with business leaders and to work with our community to really accept the individuals we serve, because they have a right in this world too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll take a moment to plug the Chambers program, the South Jersey Summer Institute for Educators, which Bancroft has played a role in now for, it's got to be close to a decade at this point. And that program, and we've talked about this before on the podcast as well, is all about connecting teachers with the employer community to make sure that teachers know what jobs are available for their students, college track, not college track, et cetera. And I know about a decade ago, we all had a conversation and said, are you targeting this program to students coming up with autism or disabilities that can be out in the employer community? And mind blown, no, and why have we, this is such a huge hole in this program. Bancroft has stepped up, continues to participate, and one of your teachers at the Bancroft School always participates in this program and asks great questions of employers like, have you ever hired someone on the spectrum? And if not, why not? And just starting that conversation, I think, is so much of...
And how we can help you do it.
Exactly. And your team is the best there. So,
What's happening in the world of AI as far as educating your students and your communities? And what do you think the future looks like for that?
So it's coming fast and furious. We're trying to kind of honestly get our arms around it. But we've really seen technology overall really come fast and furious and really impact the organization in a positive way, especially in the individual's home, and to help them be more independent, which is ultimately our overall goal. And so, for instance, from a technology perspective, we got a $500,000 grant from the state of New Jersey, and we installed smart homes, so smart appliances, into 10 group homes. Mm-hmm. So they're fully outfitted in, things like they can open the door with their thumbprint. Wow. They can, the stove shuts off as soon as you take something off, so they don't have to worry about, how to shut it off, and the sink stops when they take their hands away. The bed shakes if there's a fire, so it wakes them up and they get them out. They have each individual med dispensers. So they, at 7 a.m. every morning, here's your meds. Wow. and how to take them. So that's been just really exciting to see. We also do a lot of work with virtual reality. So a lot of companies, there's this one specifically that we're working with, and we use it for trainings for our staff, really, so they can see, like, here's a day in the life of a staff at Bancroft, right? Really helping with training, and also helping the individuals we serve go on trips, different things they've ever seen. AI specifically, we're partnering with St. Joe's University.
My alma mater.
Yes, mine as well.
Mine too. And that's not why you're here, by the way.
And they have a robot named Iggy for Ignatius. And Iggy's all about AI. It's a whole pilot program that's interacting with the individuals we serve to really keep them engaged, so that when the staff's cooking or doing this or that, there's somebody there to play a game with them and to engage with them. So we're really excited. And, 100%, we will never have robots run the organization, I promise you. But to really kind of support some of the staff, because there's a lot of work they got to do. I think it's going to be a fabulous, exciting.
Well, that's great. Pilot. And it's exciting to hear about Iggy as well.
Yeah,
because it will change things for sure.
One thing that you can't miss listening to this is your passion still for the organization, even after 20 years. And that shows a true commitment and love of what you do. And Joe kind of led the conversation with saying, did you think you were going to be a CEO? And but growing up, who were your mentors? Who did you look up to say, one day I could do X, whatever it is?
So, first and foremost, I have to start with my mom, which I know a lot of people do. So I'm one of four. I'm the only girl. And my mom, back in the day, went to work every day for a public accounting firm. Wow. When all the other moms were stay-at-home moms and having play dates, and my mom worked, right? So I didn't love it at the time. But, I learned, as I look back, that my mother had a successful career in a male-dominated firm, and she successfully raised a family, 4 kids. Every night she came home from work and made us dinner, and she went to work every day and had a very successful career. So I kind of grew up like not thinking any different, like, so will I. And I'm going to go in my male-dominated field, and I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to raise a family, and I made dinner every single night. So, right. You don't know it at the time, but you really look back, like, she for sure was a role model. When I think about, role models, about my leadership style, I would say it's everybody I worked for. And I would encourage everybody to think that. And sometimes people say, well, I don't like my boss. They're the best ones to learn from, because that's what you learn, what you're never going to do, right? And so I would say that I built my leadership style through watching the leaders before me. And, and like, you never really think I want to be a CEO. Like, I never really thought that, but I always thought, like, I could do this a little bit better. I could do this a little bit different. And that's all it takes, is a little bit different, a little bit better, to build your confidence that, what, I'm going to go for the next job. Right. So I think paying attention to the people you work for is the best.
I think that's important lessons, Toni, that you say, is that you learn from everyone. right? Things, and even as the boss you've least liked, you'll learn from them.
You'll learn from them.
And that's an important aspect of it, which I think is important. You know, one of the things you bring to the table, and you and I have spoken about this many times, is your leadership presence. You know, I'm always impressed by your presence and how important it is for you to represent an organization and how you feel about it. What would you tell aspiring young people about the importance of executive presence and what that means when you step into leadership roles?
You know, it's a great question, Joanne. And I wouldn't say I was like, I want to do this. Part of me is it's my nature, right? I like people, right? And I like to get to know people, and people would be like, oh, it sounds like you actually care about like my family. I'm like, well, I really do. I mean, so like, I'm not making it up. Right. But even if it's not a part of your nature, I think it's really important, especially in a human services organization. I mean, we have these 3,000 staff who do God's work. I mean, truly, they're awe-aspiring people. The least I could do is say thank you to them and acknowledge them, and to be out watching what they, and sometimes, and I learned this over time, like just my presence means so much to them, because they don't think I'm sitting in an ivory tower, like making decisions that I have nothing about. So just being out and about, I have seen just a dramatic acceptance of, for sure, I would tell people to watch their leaders and really learn from it. I would say you need to intentionally engage, right? So be intentional about building relationships, be intentional about joining work groups and committees, and like, what else can I do, right? We all want that person on our staff that says, what else can I do? Like, be engaging. And the second thing I would say is be patient. Like, it doesn't happen overnight, but just keep doing what you're doing, really be engaging, interact with people, and it will come.
Well, you worked at a great place prior to working at Bancroft, and that had a foundation. As you know, I worked at another part of that organization in Philadelphia, and I think that that's true. You learn from so many people along the way. And the one thing that I always would look at is, what are some of the things that you should tell aspiring leaders besides that? We all know career paths are not linear. But what do you think important steps are that leaders can do to continue to educate themselves and to be knowledgeable? Talking about connections is one thing, but what is it they need to learn?
So continuous learning, I think, is important for sure. And I would say a lot of it is just, what's happening. I mean, right now, we should all be learning about AI. We don't know how it's going to impact us, but we should all be learning about it. We should be learning about, some of the issues going on in our world today, right? Just so we can be cognizant of how it impacts our work and our industry. Just keeping like really current on things happening in your industry. Read, talk, go to conferences. I always encourage my team to go to conferences. Those in South Jersey, I mean, the Chamber offers wonderful things, but even to go out of the state, like go to different industry conferences. Like we learn stuff from them that we would never think of on our own, right? So it's be curious, like really be curious.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No good leader doesn't become a leader without facing challenges and figuring out how to work through those issues. Can you talk about a time, I mean, kind of when you came into Bancroft, immediate challenge, talk a little bit about other challenges maybe you faced and how that helped shape the leader you are today.
When I came in, it was very, like, I was thrown right in the fire, right? So the first thing that happened was my phone rang off the hook saying, we're going to shut down all the utilities. We're going to kick you out of the house. You haven't paid rent. You haven't paid utilities. You haven't paid your health care. We're going to cancel that. Like, stop. Just give me a minute here, right? And so, but that was my skill set. Like, that's what I knew how to do. So when I think of, really like leadership challenges, I think, and it's funny when I think back, when I came into Bancroft, the real challenges I was dealing with was, we had inadequate funding. Like there was just not enough funding for the work we did. There was not enough staff for the work we did. And everything moved at a really slow pace. 20 years later, there's not enough funding. Mm-hmm. There's not enough staff and things were moving at a slow pace. But in addition to that, like I think it's a whole different world for leaders today. We're dealing with uncharted waters in that we all had to figure out how to lead when the world closed down under COVID. Right. We're all learning to lead through cyber attacks, right? Where somebody wakes up every day trying to steal your data. Like we weren't trained for this stuff. We're trying to lead through diversity, equity, and inclusion, where people's expectations about feeling included are heightened. And they're right, but that's a new thing for us, right? And then just the conflict between people around the geopolitical idea.
Right.
Like we weren't trained under this, right? We were trained on tasks and tactical things. And I feel this emotional piece is very real that every leader is dealing with. And I think that, we got to lean in and help each other through them because it's hard. It's really hard, but it's the right thing to do, 100%.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And you're right. I think every leader is watching how other leaders tackle, because it's challenging and crucially important in an environment now where, your team, your employees, they want to feel a sense of belonging and purpose in every workplace that they're in, whether it be a school, whether it be a nonprofit, whether it be a hospital. So absolutely.
What do you like to do in your spare time that kind of helps decompress you?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So I have 2 boys, and they're certainly older now. So I used to go to games and drive them around. But today I would say I get to read a lot, which I like. I'm a big walker. I love to walk. In the city, on the beach. Trying to be better at exercise. Can't say I'm quite there yet, but I just like non-thinking time. I don't know how to say that, but you really just need times. And, and I think it's really healthy for everybody just to give yourself time to breathe.
That's so true. And so you said you like to read in your spare time. We want to know your favorite book. But before you do that, we did not give the title of your book before.
Yeah, I figure and where we get it.
And where to get it, because I know that's a little complicated.
Yes. So the name of the book is Too Important to Fail, Leadership Lessons in Nonprofit. And I titled that because I truly believe that Bancroft was too important to fail. And you can get it at bancroft.org. So on the website, we'll take you there. Do not go to Amazon. People are reselling it on Amazon for really ridiculous prices. So don't go to Amazon. Just get right to Bancroft's website. So my favorite book, other than mine,
is your book. But other than your book,
I'm sure every leader, like we have this bookcase, right, in our offices that has hundreds of leadership books on it. Some of them I bought. People always giving them to me. Like I got all
just
this
to make
time.
it look good.
Because I can't have the time. But I would say one of my favorite leadership books, and I think it was because the first one I read that really was aha to me. It's called Blue Strategy do you know it? By Renee.
Well.
And the concept is you take 2 known industries, red oceans, and you combine them into a blue ocean of it, right? So a clock and a bracelet come together and be a watch. Mm-hmm. Ballet and circus come together to be Circus Soleil. Right. And it was just a fascinating way for me to think of, like, you don't have to start from scratch. Like, look at what's already out there and bring your strategy together. I think it's terrific.
Oh. I never heard of that book.
It's a great book.
Oh, it's a great book.
And I'm going to buy it.
As a matter of fact,
it's a different way to think.
And Amazon's created that with a lot of problems.
And you just sold it.
Take an internet and a book and sell it. Now take an internet and everything and sell it.
Exactly. It's really, it's a great way to think.
So we've been fortunate to have you today. And you have been a colleague and a friend of ours for years and a leader in this community that we're all inspired by. But this podcast is important to leaders because we're trying to really bridge the gap between what people learn and where they put in action. And you are a person who's done that. So it was great to have you today. We appreciate you giving us time and being part of this. And I'm going to let my co-hosts give the final farewell, but you've been great to have here. And thank you, Toni.
Thank you.
Here. I ditto everything Joe said. And Toni, we know how busy you are. We appreciate you taking time out of the day job to do something that really we hope people are going to listen in and learn a lot from. And there's no one better to learn from than you. So thank you.
That's great. And, I'll thank you both back. You've been very instrumental in my career as well. And we're all in this together. Yeah. We need each other. So I appreciate you letting me join you here today.
Great. Have a great day.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. What was your key takeaway from this discussion? Share it on our social media channels at Simply Dynamic Podcast. Next up in our Fresh Perspective segment, established leaders and early career professionals will share insights and ideas on volunteerism and leadership.
Being a volunteer is all about helping the community. It's all about reaching out to people, connecting with people, and assisting other people, being selfless. The benefit of being a volunteer is social impact. The impact that you have on other people's lives as a volunteer is what motivates a lot of people and people that want to get into the volunteerism field. I remember They'll ask, when I was going for job interviews, they'll ask me if I volunteered anywhere, because it's a skill. That's the first part. It's a skill. And it says so much about you as a person. It says you are someone who has great social impact. You have a really refined public image. So as a volunteer, those are the key benefits of being a volunteer. And a lot of people will be, they always mention that, oh, I don't have the calling of being a volunteer. No one is called to be a volunteer. No one was born in being a volunteer. People learn to be volunteers.
Being able to be a leader in a volunteer setting gives folks the opportunity to be leaders who may not always have that as a choice. In corporate America, there are very well prescribed roles for directors, VPs, executives, things like that. But those are not the people typically who are going to lead in a volunteer setting. People who are going to lead in a volunteer setting are subordinates who want to go above and beyond and kind of make a name for themselves through these volunteer activities. And being a leader in those situations can not only improve your leadership skills just through the act of doing, but it can also improve the way that the company that you're working for looks at you as a leader. If you are volunteering in your off time and you are the person, the go-to person for a volunteer organization or a nonprofit, then when you go to work and you talk about that, you're going to be seen in a more positive light for your volunteer leadership. And I think that's very important for job satisfaction. There are a lot of people who may have been leaders at a previous company and now are either switching jobs or changing sectors and find themselves in a lower role than they would normally be used to. And the opportunity to go to some volunteer events and be a leader gives them, I think, the opportunity to flex that leadership muscle. Because as we all know, leadership is a skill that, if it's not used, it can definitely be lost. So being able to hone leadership skills through volunteer activities outside of work, I think also just makes you a more well-rounded leader.
I'm a big proponent of volunteerism for myself and for the impact of others. You don't realize the one little thing extra that you do for someone or a company will have a lasting impression. It benefits me, it benefits the community. When you volunteer, you build your strengths in leadership. You also build your confidence. And as well as you build your network, the people that you're volunteering with or the organization that you're helping, you can make connections with these people and make a lasting impression. And lastly, you can build your career growth. You don't realize a lot of your companies that out there, they require volunteer hours, but you put in those extra hours, that has a lasting impact into your career and also the company you work for. Lauren Kirk, M&T Bank, Senior Commercial Credit Underwriter, Rowan Alumni MBA 2022, current MS Finance student, Royer College of Business.
Ronald Ngwashi, Financial Analyst at People Assisting the Homeless, Los Angeles, California. Rowan University MBA MS Finance student, Rowan College of Business MBA MS Finance Fellow.
Zachary Rujas, Environmental Sustainability Specialist at Integra Life Sciences, Roar College of Business MBA Fellow 2023, and a Rowan University MBA Alumni 2024.
In each episode of the Simply Dynamic podcast, we like to close out with an action-oriented tip from an expert that you can implement in your workplace. Today's expert advice comes from Dr. Jordan Howe, the director of Rowan University's Center for Responsible Leadership, an associate professor of sustainable business in the Roar College of Business, and co-founder of Double Albatross Design, a sustainability consultancy for golf courses.
One thing that I think about a lot is whether or not sustainability leadership is in fact distinct from good leadership overall. And there's some pretty good arguments both ways that sustainability leadership is just kind of a subset or an application of overall good leadership skills. So about sustainability leadership, I think one of the most important things is first to define what sustainability actually means for your organization. Are you just trying to save money on your power bill or use less paper or have everyone with a refillable water bottle? Or are you trying to do something that's more kind of strategically oriented, that maybe reaches into the world of product design or marketing or things like that? Related to that is the importance of formulating a clear vision for sustainability. You should be able to explain what is the sustainability goal for your organization in like a minute or maybe just a couple of sentences, something that's easily understood and can be quickly communicated to your employees and whatever other stakeholders. The last thing I would say is that you want to structure your sustainability transition, whatever that looks like for your organization, to include lots of kind of small victories along the way to achieving your big organizational goal. So we should be able to kind of structure sustainability to have these like clear and immediate wins along the way. What did we do, this week, this month that sort of clearly contributes to our big sustainability vision, which everyone is hopefully aware of. A lot of my thinking on this topic comes to us from a guy named John Cotter, who wrote a great article called Leading Change, Why Transformation Efforts Fail. And it's worth checking out and thinking about the implications of those other types of transitions and how they might work for sustainability issues. Jordan P. Howell, Associate Professor of Sustainable Business and Director of the Rowan Center for Responsible Leadership.
Thank you to all of our guests for joining us today, and thank you, our audience, for listening to the Simply Dynamic podcast. This podcast is a collaborative project led by the Graduate Studies team at Rowan University's Rohr College of Business in partnership with our hosts, Joe Devine and Christina Renna, and with support from producer and creative director Keith Brand, a professor in Rowan's radio, television, and film department. Music from this episode came from Epidemic Sound and Renku Corporation, recorded in collaboration with nonprofit partners. To learn more about the Simply Dynamic podcast, visit simplydynamicpodcast.com. Until the next episode, take care, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.